how do you develop a healthy community, right? Because we all have experiences with negative communities or bad experiences, whatever, getting told that you're a crap developer. But how do you create a community and a culture that actually is positive in spite of all of the negativity?
All right, welcome everybody to the PBBG podcast, episode 4. We are here with you today with Delta, Zala, and Ian. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us back. Yeah, sounds like we're not doing too bad if we're still here, right?
Yeah. No, we're keeping the momentum going. I'm liking it. Today we're going to be talking about community. Kind of what it means to us and our own personal experiences with it. I guess so. Even just introducing it, you hear that involuntary heavy sigh I do there, because community is something that's so incredibly rewarding of an experience when you capture the good spirit of what it can be, but it's also incredibly frustrating and difficult when you have challenges that aren't so easy to work through. So I was gonna I could talk about some of my experiences with Imperial conflict, or if you guys want to talk about any of your experiences.
Go for it.
All right, I'll go ahead and kick it off then. So I'm a lot comes to mind for me personally when I think about it, because I've been in that community for like 20 years now or something like that, and that's a long time to be with a group of people. And I originally was a player in that game, as you guys know, and I took over as the owner and developer and admin, all that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest things that I learned that took me way too long to learn is that you can't have a community that serves everybody out there in the world. It's just impossible. Because if you try to, it's like that saying, you can't please everybody, right? And that was something that it was a very difficult lesson to learn, because for me, as the guy who wants everyone to be happy, I tried too hard, I think, to make everybody happy, and ended up biting me in the face, or biting me in the butt, rather. I guess biting me in the face too, I don't know. But I could think of a lot of instances as the developer in particular where people come to you with complaints about the game, like, oh, this isn't working, or this sucks, or whatever. And with feedback, you got such a range of kind of ways that people express it. Some people are very helpful; they give you screenshots or whatever, and some people are very not helpful. They'll tell you how much you suck as a developer, how much you suck as a person, and that kind of put me in this place where I wasn't actually, I think, a very good person to be managing the community, because I took everything kind of personally. And that was a lesson that I had to learn, to kind of distance myself from the, separate the critique from the vitriol that comes with it sometimes, and kind of remove myself from that so that I could still remain a positive presence in the community. Because, anything that's present, be it good or bad, is going to perpetuate itself. If you have a lot of people arguing, it's just going to cause more arguing. If you have a lot of people supporting each other, a lot of people being friendly with each other, you're going to get more of that. So I think that was my biggest takeaway, I guess, with regard to just dealing with people and managing relationships and building relationships, is that you got to stay positive. You got to stay, supportive of people, even when they're not necessarily supportive of you. And in my mind, it's kind of analogous to any real life relationship, any other type of relationship that you have, is that, you don't want to be petty. You want to be welcoming. You want to support people. You want to be friendly. And that's, it's a tough thing to learn in life in general, but in a situation in an online gaming community, it's particularly challenging because there's so much anonymity, that kind of thing. And, that's where I'll kick it off with my general spiel, I guess. I don't know if you guys wanted to jump in with any of your experiences with any of that.
Yeah, I think, we have a particularly difficult job as community stewards, is that gaming communities are by far the worst groups of people on the planet, just overall. And they could be just intensely toxic, you hear about stories all the time of games. I think the last big controversy was The Last of Us. There could have been more since, but these companies and really these people spend hundreds of thousands of hours crafting and creating and getting everything right and thinking of players. And the moment that their creation gets seen by the players that they care so much about, they just tear it to pieces. Like Mass Effect Andromeda was another good one.
Cyberpunk.
It just seems Cyberpunk. Yeah,
I'm guilty of that. I was
one.
pretty harsh on that game when I went in.
And it's a hard thing to get right. It's a hard thing to create a community that's healthy and doesn't foster a lot of toxicity inherently. And whatever that secret recipe is, I think it's still kind of out there. It's very hard to understand all the different dynamics at work and at play, and it really how to make sure that you build up something that's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, that was one of my questions kind of like coming into this conversation is how do you develop a healthy community, right? Because we all have experiences with negative communities or bad experiences, whatever, getting told that you're a crap developer. But how do you create a community and a culture that actually is positive in spite of all of the negativity, right? Like some of the like for Cyberpunk, for example, some of the hate for that game was it was unfinished, it was buggy, blah, blah, blah. But I think maybe underlying that was a degree of transparency that people thought, oh, I'm buying this finished game, I'm buying this awesome product, and then finding out I'm not actually getting what I was sold. Like No Man's Sky, another good example. Mm-hmm. You get sold this huge idea, this amazing universe, and then you buy the game and you're like, wait, this is not really what I signed up for. But then you have people gladly paying $20 for, a early dev version of Minecraft, which arguably is less cool than even No Man's Sky on release, but they're excited about it because it's full transparency. This is what you've got. This is the current build that, you're getting access to. There's no hidden anything. So transparency, I think, is maybe one of those pieces, but I'd be curious to hear like what you guys would say are some other core attributes of a healthy community.
I think a lot of a healthy community actually comes down to the game itself and how it's led. A lot of different genres produce a lot of different people. Fantasy games generally have people that are way more fun. But then you get to like mafia games and gangster games, and you have people that have a huge ego. So I don't think it's solely how you can foster a community. I think a lot of it actually revolves around your game and its ideas in itself.
That's interesting. I never considered that. I mean, it makes sense. Something like a mafia game, there's kind of a role play element to it. You come in, you want to be the big boss or whatever, and there's maybe some kind of projection that comes along with that maybe that manifests in the interactions with other players or between players. I would think though, even with that though, that's just another variable that can be managed, and maybe it's maybe more difficult to do so to build a healthy community in a game like that, but it can still be done if the leaders are aware of that particular challenge. I wouldn't know. I've never led that kind of game, but I would imagine maybe that's still doable, with the right mindset.
Well, Imperial Conflict is inherently a competitive-based game, right?
Yes.
Would you say that the community is kind of competitive in the same aspect?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's been one of our bigger challenges, is that the game is inherently not even just competitive. It's like I'm trying to figure out a way to quickly explain this to no one who's ever experienced it. The game's hard. It's just incredibly difficult. And that's good and bad in terms of gameplay, but in terms of social interactions, it's very brutal. You could come into the game as a new player and make friends very quickly, and the game's great for that. But on the other end of it, you've got some vets that will totally tear you apart, and they will, and this is something that we have to work on, is players will get really extreme with the trash talking. And it's a cultural problem that we haven't figured out yet. It's been something that I've been trying to figure out since I've been running it. It's very, very difficult to pin down, because it's just, like we're saying, it comes with a game that is that competitive that people just get angry when they lose, or they get like super hyped up, or they want to troll when they win. And it's very, very difficult to balance that competitive spirit with providing an experience that's pleasant for the general audience. It's tough for sure.
Yeah, where do you draw the line? Because like some of the best experiences that I've had in communities are those hyper competitive communities where there is an abundance of trash talk and trolling and over the top and the memes and the propaganda, right? Like sure. The EVE Online subreddit, for example, or like even early days, like to bring it back to PBBGs, like early day tribal wars, like people were brutal. But that was part of what brought me to the game, is that people could get so amped up about a stupid browser game that I was also invested in. I'm like, man, this is like a whole culture that people have created.
Yeah.
And maybe not the most positive community, like everyone's not happy and Care Bear and, go lucky, but I think it's the most fun to be a part of because people are so invested. So how do you like leverage the investment of people while still drawing the line of like, okay, that crossed the line. You can't do that ever again.
Sure. So the rule that I've had from when I took over is that, keep the personal attacks down to a minimum. Like you could, within the context of the game, there's a little bit of role playing, there's whatever. You could even talk trash or say, hey man, you really you were just bad at that battle. You made some stupid mistakes or whatever, and that's fine. That's part of the trash talk. But once you start talking about people's personal problems, or you start getting into things they're beyond that layer, and you start attacking them in ways that are going to strike those very bad chords, that's where I say okay, that's not the same thing. That's not okay. And that's what's rough about that is, like I was saying earlier, you can't please everybody. There are players who think that you should be able to do that. That's just their style. It's what they were brought up in. They think that's fair game. And that's where some of our, problems come, is there's discontent amongst the community that say like, hey, we're not babies here. We're all, for the most part, grown, mature adults. We should be able to say whatever we want. And then there's people who obviously think, well, no, that's not right. You're going to alienate a lot of people. And I don't like being talked to that way when I'm trying to relax and play a game. And it's finding that balance in between to say like, yeah, we can't, handhold everybody. But also there's a limit, where if at some point you're just being mean for the sake of ruining someone's day, that's not really trash talk necessarily, It's tough. It's tough balance.
No, that's a good line. That makes a lot of sense. I'm taking notes too, because I'm building a competitive PvP game. And so trying to figure out like, okay, this kind of stuff is going to come up. And so how can I kind of take some notes to prepare against that? Because like Elithor is not very competitive, right? Like people are competitive. They want to be on top of the leaderboards. They want to, be the very best. And there's different ways to do that. But the ways to do that are not by attacking others like in the game, right? It's all purely your own ladder that you're climbing and then comparing. Whereas Trounce will be, you're tearing other, like the way that you get big is by taking it from other people, which is a lot of fun, but also, crosses that line. So I'm interested from like my own experience, but then also like building a game, like the kinds of things that will come up and trying to like take notes from that perspective too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. But do you guys have any thoughts on anonymous play as a factor in that? Because one of the debates we had in our community is whether or not you should be able to play every round as a new anonymous player, or if everyone should know exactly who you are, because that makes a huge difference too. What do you guys think?
Double-edged sword, isn't it? Like, you know what people say about Reddit? Like, it brings out the best and worst in people because it's anonymous. I know it's not a game, but it's an example of like how people go about, or how they are when they are anonymous. I have guest accounts in my new game, and they're completely anonymous. Like, it's just guest and then a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, I think even if you like do encourage people to be the same account throughout all the different rounds, if you are playing a game that completely resets, people will create different accounts anyway. Like I know the entire, like there's alt communities like for Tribal Wars back in the day where you'd have like your main account that everyone was aware of and would play, but then you also had alt accounts that you were running, sometimes with multiple other people. And those were always highly anonymous, or it didn't belong to one specific person. It belonged to like groups of people, and like all those lines got blurred. And like InnoGames tried to moderate that to a degree, but then it's like at some point, we've all experienced this. Like, how do you stop multis from showing up in your games? Like, it's so hard to track. You can't use IP address. You can't even use computer. Like, the way of tracking that stuff is really difficult. So at some point, you just draw the line and say, you know what, whatever. Like, if you want to make an alt account, you can do that. And that makes it harder, I think, to moderate and to build a healthy community if everyone is anonymous. Like, getting away just from preventing toxicity, but how do you like build healthy community is really difficult when there is anonymity. Like, because you're not really building community with individuals, you're kind of building community with like within the culture of the game and the allegiances. Like, oh, I fight for this side or this team versus other team, or oh, I'm a member of so-and-so alliance and their stated values are XYZ, and you're attributing your identity to like a a group rather than as an individual, which I think creates a healthier level of community because it's not any one person who's trash talking, right? You don't want to be associated with that person. But on another level, like you are kind of lost in the crowd as just a member of a group, which I know some people like, and some people, they want to be, the big crime boss that everyone knows. So
yeah. That's actually a really good point because, when you have social games, you inherently develop reputation, right? And there are some games, some PBBGs in particular, that use reputation to kind of help it. I think it's more in the Mafia world, but even social representation or reputation is important because if you're the top, like if you're part of the top clan or guild or whatever, those carry a reputation with it. And then when a member joins, then like I've seen on a bunch of games where like people get kicked out of those groups because they're not upholding the moral standard or the social standard of the reputation of the people in that group. And so like, that can really factor in the way and mechanics that you have your social structures built can help encourage a more healthy environment of like, okay, well, my reputation is a lot, like how people are going to be dependent on me or willing to be dependent on me or my group or anything like that. So I think constructing it in a way with those social structures in mind and also kind of encouraging a little bit of like cooperation or almost vulnerability in there as well can really help kind of like, people who are going to be really malicious, it's very difficult for them to survive, right? And you kind of can build mechanics around making it difficult for those kind of people to exist in your game. I'm trying to think of actual PBBGs that kind of have that out of my mind. I played a couple Kingdom Builders that were kind of around like that. Oh, Archive was a lot like that. Clans and guilds and being able to quickly use diplomacy to rally together, and like the social ties between groups was really, really important. Yeah.
That makes sense. I feel like what you're saying about rewarding that type of behavior, it's like anything else. If you incentivize good behavior, you're going to get more of it. And I feel like that's something that seems obvious as I talk about it. Like, the saying, don't feed the trolls and that kind of thing. Like if you engage with people who are going to bring bad energy into your community, it's going to continue to grow. But if you kind of like say, all right, don't have an argument, just ban them, be done with it. Meanwhile, invest your energy into the players that are being helpful. Use that time and energy to keep building up the people who want to show something positive. I feel like that does a lot of good. It's sometimes difficult, but it's definitely worthwhile to reward the good behavior. Even though, it sounds so obvious to say it, but sometimes it's really difficult to do when you're in the middle of it, when you have all this stuff going around, and I feel like it's a lead by example kind of thing. If you're not even as the game dev, if you're a leader of faction or even a player, or even anybody who could be playing any of these games, if you want, it sounds like a cliche, but be the change you want to see in the world. It's really true. It really is. Like every positive interaction any player is going to have with another player, it feels good, and it's going to perpetuate because that person that they interact with is going to do the same thing likely with the next person. It's a culture thing. They're going to see it as an example, think, oh, this is how this game works. This is how this community works. This is what we do around here. And that, hopefully perpetuates that kind of positive energy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a herd immunity, right? You develop a herd immunity of positivity. At some point, it just kind of like spills over. And
yeah. I think that's 100% true. Like I'm seeing that in Elithor even. Like, so half of that I think is like a lead by example, right? Like if you engage with people who are positive, if you're positive, even if trolls come and scream at your face, you're a terrible developer, being like, you know what, you're probably right. I'm a terrible developer. And just diffusing those situations, like you bring the positivity kind of out of the woodwork and people feel okay being positive. And so I think that is half of it, like leading by example. But then I think the other half, right, is feeding that positivity, like rewarding that positivity or giving people a platform for their positivity or highlighting that if they're like, super nice to someone else, like highlighting that in like a public announcement, like channel, or, if a guild like a guild versus guild battle and one guild loses, but they lose honorably, like highlighting the fact that it was an honorable loss. And like, this is the kind of people that we want to be, and doing it in a fun way, even not just like, hey, be like them, but like, man, they like lost the best way I've ever seen anyone lose before. And like highlighting that is like, people are like, oh man, next time we lose, like we want to be like that too. Like it's that leading by example, but also highlighting like the positiveness, I think is really key. Yeah.
I think it means a lot for players when you acknowledge them, regardless of what the circumstances are of them in the game, to be seen, in the community, to be acknowledged, to have that validation that you're, you have a place in the community. Because I think that's all the community is. You want a place to belong. You're playing with new people that become your friends. You build the relationships and you start to know people. That's it's important for people to feel like they have a place to be, as opposed to just ignored or feel like they don't matter or anything like that.
Yeah,
I think that hits in a pretty big area of what is like the goal of the community. Like why is everybody together? If the community is centered around a inherently competitive game, then the community is going to be competitive. It like mimics it really well. But the goal is to maximize play, right? That's really the goal. For like PBBG.com community, we have a really positive community. We don't even have like any community rules still. Not that that's a challenge, please, knock on wood. But, our goal as a gaming genre community is to maximize the amount of games that we can play, right? We need more players for that. We need more games for that. And we need players to find games. Like that's how that cycle works. And so the goal isn't adversarial, like at its root. The goal is very cooperative. It's very fostering and helping people. And we have that, a lot of people learning, which induces a little bit of vulnerability in there, and people want to protect that. I think it's kind of an instinctual thing to want to protect that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's very intentional too. Like, because you could have a gaming community that wants to help people find good games, but the way they do that is by pointing out all the trash games you should never touch. And so they could post all the news about like, oh, this game was terrible. Here's all the drama about this game. This developer did this terrible thing, and all that kind of like, you could still achieve the same goal of helping people find the right games to play, but doing it in a negative way versus in a positive way. Like, oh man, this brand new game is coming out, or hey, this person is trying to develop a game. Let's help them stress test their server. Or, hey, check out this game that another developer made, and he's not even part of this community, but he really wants to like people to play his game, and I thought I could post it here, right? Like it's the all encompassing, like, hey, let's get everybody together and we'll all play all the games and try them out. Like it's that positive element to it that I think really encourages other people to be positive. And right, like it's that vulnerability. Like you get a developer who's brand new and they're like, hey, I just made this game. It's not even that fun. And I just want to put it out there to see. And they'll easily get 20, 30 people to try the game out and give them feedback in a positive way, right? And that's like hard to find in most communities, I would argue. But like ours is so welcoming and so encouraging of new ideas and new things that it's kind of perpetuated that self. And in some way we have gotten that herd immunity, right? Of like, if someone comes in and starts trash talking, you're going to have people who are not you guys like coming in and saying, hey, what the heck? You can't just say that to people, right? Like members of the community backing up the culture and ethos of the community in a way that like, because you've set the baseline of this is what we do, this is who we are, and people have adopted that. So yeah, sure. It's hard to create that, but once it is created, I think there is like a level of herd immunity where it's like, no, like as long as you just continue being consistent, like you're going to keep getting the results that you've created. So yeah,
that's a good example of the values being well understood. And we had that drama, or I wouldn't even call it drama. It wasn't even that big a deal, but we had that instance in our own community where there was some contention around, whether or not we can't take critique as game developers. And, the point was missed that like, no, we're fine with critique. It's just how you critique. You could tell someone like, hey, I don't think your game is, going to do too well. I think you have these problems, or, we have a pretty high bar, or a high tolerance for, being critical, but what we don't really, tolerate much is just being mean-spirited about it.
Yeah.
And when that happened for us, what was interesting to me is it wasn't even initially our moderators that said anything about it. It was other community members that were stepping out and saying, hey, wait a second. What are you doing? Can you chill out a little bit? And then, our staff had to come and say, oh yeah, we got to take care of this. So to your point, I think that was like a nice example of, there being a generally well understood like sense of like, this is This is what we do. And we protect ourselves. We allow people to be vulnerable as developers, whatever, and we'll be critical, and that's fine. But if people come stomping around and making it unpleasant, we're gonna protect our values. It's really nice for me to witness that, because I've failed so badly at that with Imperial Conflict, I think. So as a contrast, it's nice to have some success, I suppose.
Well, Ian, I know, like, as a new, you've put more than one game out. I think it's the same game in spirit, but it's been different ones. How was that reception to the public?
Which time? There's been a few. The first time I've released games, they've been pretty good. The reception in general has been, good. I've only ever released Mafia games, though. Idlecraft is going to be my first kind of one outside of that, so we'll have to see. The first game I ever did was probably like 10 years ago, and there was no toxicity or anything. Everyone was just having a good time, despite it being kind of a Mafia game. I'm not really sure why that's the case. It just kind of happened.
Which is nice.
Yeah, you must have done something right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just like putting Mafia games down at this point.
It does attract a
Mafia games
stereotype.
are not that bad,
for sure.
I mean, yeah, but there's a lot of great people there too.
True. Yeah, I've experienced my fair share of toxicity on stuff like Neopets even. So, you can always find toxic people wherever you look.
For sure.
Oh, I've got a question for you guys, because this is something that's always interesting to me when I think about my own experiences. But have you had any particular experiences in your own communities where there's a bad situation, somebody who's unpleasant, unhappy, toxic, trolling, whatever you want to call it, and it turns around? Through whatever interaction with other community members or the developer, just something happens. That person who is having a bad experience comes around, and then it turns into a positive experience. Is that something that you have any specific examples that resonate with you as you recall them?
So I think for me, the most recent example, this was like a couple of days ago. I just have bumped up the value of all the paid packages in Elithor. And so like when you spend real money with Elithor now, you get like a bunch of other goodies with that purchase. And so part of the pushback from the community has been, okay, that definitely like makes the game slightly more pay to win, which is a downside. And then also everyone who's bought packages in the last 2 years that the game has been out are getting gypped, right? Because now you can get more money or more value for the same amount of money. So what I ended up doing was, with the wise counsel of some of my active players, they were like, hey, why don't you just retroactively give players these fame tokens, which just gives you fame experience in the game, which is a skill that everybody wants. And so retroactively through the beginning of the game, so before fame was even a skill, before you could even like get experience, basically, I retroactively gave everyone fame tokens, like 2 years worth of stuff. And so that released its own set of like pushback of people being like, hey, what the heck? Like, I was trying so hard to be number one for my level of fame, and now I can't be because all these people just got all these fame tokens. But you have other people in the community, so not even me pushing back, but other people in the community saying, hey, Zala wants to do this full time. This is like he's giving a non-pay to win, arguably. Like it doesn't block progress in any way, right? It's something that is leaderboards, whatever. But there's other people in the community basically like defending me and the choice and saying, this is like a good way for him to make more money without, exploiting everyone and stuff like that. So it's one of those things, right, where it's like, there's a lot of negativity starting to surface and people starting to say, hey, what the heck, and getting really upset. But then other community members stepping in and basically justifying why, like, this is a good route forward, how there could have been other more predatory routes forward, like, whatever. And so I've stepped in a couple of times, like to give some clarifications, like someone was like, hey, like, does it even cost any money to run the Elithor servers? And I was like, actually to the tune of like $500 a month. Like, it's not a trivial amount of money. And then being like, oh, I had no idea. I know it's bad architecture. I'm a bad developer.
Hey, join the club, man.
Everyone can quote me on that. But yeah, like me giving clarifying points, but not having to defend the decision really at all. Like the majority of the player base being able to come in and defend it, especially on something like monetization, kind of like was eye-opening for me about, wow, like this is the community that's kind of developed where people are arguing that no, Zala should be able to make more money from this game that we've all been able to benefit from. Was kind of like a, whoa, that's super cool kind of a moment for me. So.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I feel like that says something about the trust that you've built within the community, is that the fact that, you know, even if you're not there, people know that they understand where you're coming from. They know that you're not trying to do a cash grab. They understand the situation a little bit, and they're able to, you know, spread that information around as needed if there ever is any question of like, what the heck's going on.
Yeah,
that's a nice turnaround of that initial maybe state of anxiety that some people may have, to come around and realize like, oh, okay, it's Zala's not some evil overlord who's trying to, you know, take my wallet from me, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's definitely other developers in the space who do have that, you know, cash grab. Oh, that's the cash grab, you know, game or whatever. Without naming any specific names, but the people have gotten that reputation over the years.
You could say it's Fuhan Pai. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
We do it.
Imperial Conflict with all its predatory monetization that exists. Yeah. But yeah, just like having a clear not that is beneficial, I think. So, I mean, that was a horrible sentence, but
no, that's
like clearly not a predatory developer that people are willing to say like, no, this is completely justified. This is fine. Like is a win.
Oh, that's a great example.
I think Fu kind of hit it on the nose too. Is it's that trust factor, right?
Yeah,
and that's hard to earn, very easy to get rid of. And I've seen or heard of rather a lot of games who, you know, garner and create that trust, and then in an instant, you know, it all goes down the drain of like, oh man, all of our accounts got hacked. It was from a developer that you gave access to, this random guy. Like all these things are coming up, and like that trust just gets eviscerated in a second. But it's hard to create. I think that trust in where the community is going, why you're there, that it will be taken care of, that it will, you know, like everyone is there to make it better, to make it healthy. But if you don't have trust in the primary enforcement there, then, you know, you don't have a chance. Don't have a chance.
Yeah. And it goes back to transparency too, like kind of what I was saying at the beginning, like the level of transparency, like even if everyone's accounts did get hacked, which literally happened in Elithor, like everyone's accounts got hacked. And so having to like roll that back, figure out what went wrong, but then communicate to everyone, this is what went wrong. Here's how I screwed up. And here's how I'm going to walk it forward. Like, sure, you lose people when that happens. Like people quit the game, never come back. But it also does develop trust for the people who do stay. Like, even if the worst of the worst happened and we had to do multiple rollbacks and people's accounts got hacked, like, but Zala still came through, right? And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like the reason that I still have any players at all, I think, is because of the way that situations like that were handled. Because honestly, like looking back to 2 years ago, me as a developer, he doesn't know squat. Like he's an idiot, don't run an online game, right? But now from where I'm at, like, and the fact that the community is still here is like, wow, that's, you know, I think it is like, the transparency, but then also building that trust over time.
Sure. I think there's also, along with that, you know, learning how to lead in terms of like setting the tone for the community so people see the example you're setting, they know what to, you know, what values they should be, you know, adhering to, I guess. And Delta, you made a comment there a second ago about, you know, some developers build up that trust and then, you know, they burn through it quickly. And I feel like that's unfortunately been part of my experience with IC, is that I feel like I burned through a lot of good bounty points that I had at one point, because there was a time for myself a couple years ago, or when I started, that, you know, I didn't understand that it's not about being right all the time. You know, it's not about defending every decision. Sometimes you kind of have to take yourself out of yourself and be a little more empathetic to the player and, you know, understand what their experience is. And I feel like that caused me a lot of problems, not knowing how to do that at first. And you know, that's something I'm still recovering from. But like Zala was saying, I still do have those players that have been on that journey with me. And, you know, we communicate as a community. They know me by first name. We talk about how our friends are doing, how our families are doing. We have that level of relationship with some of these players. And it does, it helps when you have those players who stick around and understand the journey a little bit, and they're willing to be a little more forgiving. But it's really important, not just as the developer, but just as a member of any community, to not, you know, get so hung up on dying on every hill, you know? sometimes it's okay. Just like, all right, you know what? People might think this of me or whatever, but it's fine. I don't want to make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. I could focus my energy on something more positive. I feel like that goes a long way, regardless of your position in the community.
Totally. And I think that a lot of people who are new to it have this weird idea where they're going to like feign omnipotence, you know, like every decision that I make is definitely the right one because I'm crafting my vision. I do, in full transparency, I do think that like omnipotent dictator is like a pretty good model to go with from my own perspective. But there's a difference between benevolent dictator. That's hugely different. But
that's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference. But like, you know, there is a form of like every decision that I make is going to be correct, whether you like it or not. Versus like, I'm going to make some decisions and I'm going to make some mistakes. And like, that's okay. Kind of doing that process publicly can help generate a lot of that trust. But I see a lot of game developers, a lot of community managers who go into it with the idea of like, they're just going to be, you know, commander in chief. They're just going to rule this with an iron fist. They're going to create all these rules and everyone's going to obey it 100%. Right. And it just like, it comes off disingenuous because it's chiefly like impossible. Right. But when you have like, to explain the benevolent dictatorship, it is like, at the end of the day, it is like your product, right? The game that you want to create, that you want to have, and stuff like that. And so, like back to what you said, Fu, like you're just never going to please everybody. And so, at some point, you got to have to put your foot down and be like, well, this is the direction we're going, and you know, it sucks that doesn't please everybody, but here we go. You know,
sure.
But the going into it, thinking that you're always going to be making the right decision and not preparing yourself for the absolute eventuality that you will make a mistake in public is super dangerous to do.
Sure. Yeah. It's unrealistic.
Yeah. And some advice that I've heard a while ago is in that realm of kind of leading and stuff is talk like you're right, listen like you're wrong. And so being confident and saying, here's what I'm going to say, and I'm sticking to this is what I have. But as soon as someone else starts communicating back, being like, okay, what if I am wrong? I really need to like listen to this with a grain of salt, but then also still say, no, this is I'm not wrong, even after listening, or maybe I am wrong, right? Like having that openness. I think that's something that Plains of Tlessa does really well. I forget the name of the dev, but he's working really hard to basically make. Yeah, it's really the creator.
Yeah.
No, you're good. But yeah, like he created his game. It's a very active play style intentionally. And he put it out there, and the feedback that he received, even from me, was this is way too active. I don't want to be this active in play. Can you make it more idle? And so he received the feedback, he thought about it, and then was like, no, I'm making a highly active game. This is exactly what I'm going to be. And I respect him for it. Like, I don't want to play the game. I don't want to be super active, but he has a very small, dedicated fan base of people that he's created that game specifically for. And they're super happy with the way that it's turned out and the stuff that he's made because he's 100% certain on, no, this is the kind of game that I want to make while still being open to receiving feedback. So just an example.
Well, I mean, there's a difference too between being confident and being closed-minded or being arrogant. You know, so you could have a strong sense of vision, but it's still valuable to listen. Like you can't ever be so like, sure of yourself that you think you know everything, because you don't. Nobody knows everything. So even if a player has what might seem like an absurd idea, I mean, you can't listen to everybody. Obviously, we only have so much time. But being willing to at least hear what players have to say, you never know what that might spark. You never know what might come of that idea. Even if that idea doesn't align with your vision, it can still turn into something else. And it's an engagement thing, because like what I was saying earlier, like if players feel like they're being acknowledged or listened to, even if you don't do what they say, the fact that you're willing to have a conversation with them, it's such a good feeling for everybody when they're heard. And then that's just, it's such a good tonal kind of thing. Like it just feels good, and that will manifest in other ways within the same group of people. If it's a positive thing where the developers feel like they listen to the players, well, then maybe the players feel like they listen to each other. Maybe it's an open feeling, inclusive kind of feeling thing, because That's just the vibe that you're setting. Versus if you're totally closed off and you're like, hey, you know what? Shut up. I know what I'm doing. Well, no one's going to want to stick around for that, you know?
Yeah.
You know, making people feel heard is probably one of the biggest level ups that I've ever had in life. Of a singular like lesson learned has done so much for my life in general, you know. And it's amazing how powerful that can be. Of like, if someone is saying something, and maybe they're not explicitly saying it, right? You have, you know, someone in the game that you're playing is like running around and just trying to trash everything and just self-detonating, right? That's a message, not in so much of words, but like they're saying something, and having them actually get the genuine impression of being heard can do a lot, you know. And you can take that, like I took it to the corporate world at work, right? And that does wonders. Personal life does wonders. Like, just, you know, listen to people, let them feel heard.
Sure.
And that's a huge lesson.
Yeah.
Sorry, that resonated personally with me.
No. I mean, that's why I like this topic so much, because this isn't even really a game discussion, although it's very relevant to our games. It's a personal, real life discussion. Like any community, a community is a group of people, right, with common interest or common whatever. And anytime you join a new community, whether it's a new group of friends or it's a new work group or whatever, I don't know about you guys, but for me, there's always a little bit of anxiety there, because you don't know where you fit in. You don't know how you're going to be perceived. You don't know if you're going to feel like you belong. And I feel like what you're saying there about, you know, people being heard or being, you know, just being, you know, just acknowledge that they exist even. That's really powerful. Not just in our games, but just in general. So if you could translate that into your game space, into your game community space, where people, a new player comes in, they say hi. If you set a space where people want to acknowledge that person, they want to make them feel welcome. That's just, I can't even put into words how powerful that is and how positive that is for people, because that's just a human experience that we want to feel like we're validated and, you know, like we matter, you know?
Yeah. That's a pretty good distillation of the subject, I think, all the way down to the core roots.
Treat people like people and everyone's happy.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, what?
Well,
most
on that
people.
note, I will say there's something there that I thought a couple minutes ago that I forgot, that I just remembered. That's the benefit of actually having some kind of personal connection with other players, like doing a game night or doing something like, you know, something that's just out of, we're here to play a game, like just connecting with them. And then you get to know the person behind the avatar, or the person behind the alias or whatever. And that's just, it's more of the same thing, you know, the person's an actual person. They're not just some text, you know, line on Discord. That goes a long way too.
Yeah.
Well, anything else we want to hit? Man, that went fast. I feel like we've got a lot of
that was good.
opinions on this. I feel like we keep going for another hour, but no, we got to wrap up.
No kidding. Yeah. We do quick picks.
Yeah, I'm down. It's for the audience. Delta, you want to explain what the quick picks are?
Yeah, absolutely. So new kind of segment-ish that we're going to try out. Quick picks, things in our life, digital or physical or otherwise, that we have found particularly useful, or things that we really enjoy that help us in our lives. So that's our quick picks. I will go first as the progenitor of quick picks. And so my quick pick is going to be PBBG charts that I have just launched. It's a personal product. As a disclaimer, this is not officially part of the PBBG.com like brand or anything like that. This is personal from my own work. And the point of PBBG charts is to create a concurrent live list of all PBBGs and how many current players that are on them every day. So if you go to light.pbbg.com, you can see charts up at the top, and go check that out. It's also on the subreddit. So
very cool.
Yeah. Nice. I'll go next, and then I got to dip out. So for the podcast listeners, you won't know any different. For the video listeners, I'll go black. That's, you know, it's good. So my quick pick is the game Foxhole. So if you've not heard of it, Foxhole is like a large persistent world divided up into a bunch of different hexes. And then you're basically a little dude running around on these hexes and you fight against the enemies, which sounds like, typical isometric war game. But the big difference is that everything in the game is built by players. So when you spawn in using a soldier supply that was made by somebody. And for someone to make a soldier supply, they had to go to a salvage field and collect salvage, put that in a refinery to create basic materials, take those basic materials to a factory to create soldier supplies, throw them in a truck, and then take them to the front lines where you spawned. And so you have the front lines, which is all these people with, different rifles and tanks and anti-tank guns and RPGs, whatever, all duking it out. But then behind that, you have all these people running Logi, which is just logistics, who are collecting raw materials, refining it, putting them in factories, figuring out the logistics lines of how to run trucks to certain depots and forts and bases to supply everything. And then the game runs in real time. So when the war is over, like whenever one side has gotten the majority of like cities, for example, then that war is over. Everyone gets a couple days break and then the next war starts. So it's this live persistent thing that happens for a couple of weeks, maybe longer. I've been sinking a lot of time into it. Yeah. It's very like, I was explaining it to my brother, like I am a cog in the machine of war. Like I'm not going to make any big difference. I'm not going to turn the tides. I'm going to gather scrap and stick it in the refinery and help my side create some more BMATs. And that's it. And I feel so good about it. It's like unbelievably rewarding. So it was also compared to like maybe EVE Online, like for people who like the idea of EVE Online, but the idea of sitting around looking at spreadsheets for 18 hours a day sounds boring. Like this scratches that same itch of being part of a larger story without having to look at spreadsheets. Like you just drive your truck around, pick up stuff, drop off stuff, fight some people, blow up a tank. Log off, and you played some part in the story. So that's my quick pick. Everyone should at least check it out. It might not be for everyone, but like at least check it out.
That's a good song.
That's on Steam, right?
Yeah, it's on Steam.
Okay.
That sounds
so I got to read this review.
There's some good ones.
If it's if it's too bad, you can just cut it. But
okay.
So, it reads, I was a young boy before going into this war. Just me, the dongler, Genji maid, Gucci butt plug, and Lotus.
A classic war tale.
So good.
Oh man. Yeah, there's people that have like, 9,000 plus hours and then they leave a review and it's like pretty good. And it's, wow. Obviously if you put 9,000 hours into the game, it's pretty good. So, but yeah.
Right. Very cool.
All right. Ian, do you want to go?
Yeah, I've gone then. I wasn't prepared at all, so I don't have anything game related. But I've been sick over the past week, and Twitter has been a lifesaver. The amount of drama that's going on across crypto, across Elon Musk, and various other things is just beautiful. It's really kept me going.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot there.
Endless source of entertainment right now.
It's a bottomless pit. It's great.
Yeah.
People say they hate Twitter, but they just haven't seen this side of Twitter.
It's definitely something. I don't even know what else to say. All right. I guess I'll go. I'm often looking for couch co-op games for my fiance and I. It's really hard to find them. It's just not as much a thing anymore, obviously. But we did find a really good one called Spaceline from Far Out. If you guys are familiar with Overcooked, it's that style of like, it's chaos, a lot is happening. You're kind of managing a lot of things in, a small amount of space. But for this, instead of it being a kitchen and you're cooking meals, the idea is that you're managing a space line, like a space vessel that's traveling to a distant planet, and you have customers. And you have to do everything from manage the radar. Someone's driving while you're managing the radar, then the passengers they need to use the bathroom, so you have to go open up a toilet, and then they're hungry and you got to feed them, and all this madness is happening. It's really, really fun. It's very silly. It's a very silly presented game, but it's really well done. So if you get a chance to check that out, we got into that over the last weekend or so. Only gripe is it's a pretty short game. I wish there's more content for it, but if you're into that kind of thing, worth checking out, I think.
Is that also on Steam?
We play that on Xbox Game Pass. I'm not sure if it's on Steam.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's it for me. Oh, it is on Steam. Yes.
Ooh, lovely.
All right, I think that's it then. This was a great conversation. I felt like it was a little bit of a therapy there for myself personally.
For sure.
Yeah. But anybody here, if you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube, if you guys have thoughts on community, we would love to hear it. It's such an important topic. Really, I feel like we could go another hour, but we only have so much time. So we'd love to hear your thoughts if you want to continue the conversation there. For now, though, I think we're going to wrap up. I didn't get to say bye to Zala, but thank you, Zala, for hanging out, and Delta and Ian as well. As always, it's always great talking to you guys.
It's been good. It feels like it's been a while since we've had all four of us.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll see what happens next month. We might be taking a break for the next month or not. We'll figure it out. But either way, you guys, as always, are more than welcome to join us on the Patreon at patreon.com/PBBG. And join us on Discord as well as chat.pbbg.com. And I think that will do it. So I will see you guys on the next one.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.